Hi, listener. Thanks for tuning in to China Manufacturing Decoded again. I'm Adrian and joined, as we often are, by our CEO, Renaud.
Hey, Adrian.
Now, in Hong Kong soon, I'll just mention this at the top of the show, you're actually on a real-life, in-person panel at the Global Sources show in Hong Kong. So buyers are actually going to be traveling to Hong Kong, and people that are already there to actually come to the show in person.
Yeah, nobody knows how many people will actually travel there, but there's zero requirement of quarantines, just some requirements that it seems are going to be waived in a few days anyway, mostly. So let's see, there's a lot of rumors. And on October 12th, which actually we're recording this podcast before that, but the podcast might come out after that. I'll be presenting something about tips to source the right kind of suppliers.
You make a good point. This is going to be out on the 14th, and so you'll have done this particular presentation, but what we're going to do is we're going to have access to that presentation, and it will go up on the Sofeast social media channels. So LinkedIn's a popular one. So anybody interested in those tips about finding the right suppliers, that's going to be coming. So keep an eye out for that. And what a change it's going to make to actually do in-person events for, the first time in years, right?
Yeah, right. First time in 3 years, I think. Yeah. It's been a long time.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how many suppliers put up a booth, and how much traffic there is, and what people generally say there. I mean, we'll talk about it after that, right? I really don't know what to expect. Some suppliers are going to be able to make the trip from mainland China, because there's, the border is a little bit open to them to come into Hong Kong. Not fully open, of course, but there are some schemes. If it's something important like a trade show, I guess they can come, some of them anyway. So that's one thing, but then you still need the foreign buyers. Anyway, they need to restart in one way or another. And then we'll see how it goes. And I think for certain categories like electronics, toys, and so on, it's going to restart in Hong Kong. It's not just going away, but especially if people cannot fly to mainland China, like to the Canton Fair and so on. But it's going to be a very slow start.
But a start nonetheless. I'm excited. It's a step in the right direction, hopefully. Yeah. But this is, I think we said the same last week, right? So,
right.
So yeah, fingers crossed. Today's topic, something a little bit different. Basically, there's one question to ask, and that is, what is quality? And this is something we talk about a lot. And at Sofeast, anybody that's been on the website, they know that quality inspections, for example, are an important solution that we provide to entrepreneurs, SMEs all around South Asia and East Asia and Southeast Asia as well. So quality is something that we've spoken about, written about a great deal, but I suppose getting into the theory of the thing and how it affects manufacturing, this is really somewhere that you've got a lot of expertise. So I'm really interested to get into that, Renaud.
Well, it's more like, taking a step back and being a little bit philosophical, right? People talk about quality and they throw this word around, and really there's a lot of things that that can be called, bad quality, good quality, whatever, depending on the context, depending on the kind of products and so on. So it really needs to be unpacked. And the first thing I would say that is useful is there's little q quality and big Q quality. I don't know where I read that a few years ago, but I was like, yeah, right. That's a nice way of putting it. So little q, a quality with a small q is very, close to the ground, very pragmatic, very not philosophical at all. It's really, there's a product, and does it conform to specifications, right? Something was promised, and is it happening? Is it really the situation? Is it within tolerance? Is it the right grade of blue? Does it turn on this way when I press that button or what? Okay, so that's the most basic approach. And really, when you look at ISO 9001 and things like that, well, it's really all about what is promised, and was the promise upheld, or is there a problem, or is there a cause for customers not to be happy? And really, it's little Q type of quality, but it has to be there. It has to be there, right? If you don't even do that, you have a problem. If you can't even deliver consistently within tolerance and exactly as promised, you get a problem. You might not stay in business for very long. So it's very much the basics. Okay, that's why mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and things like that, when they start to work in a company, they've got to learn the very basics about quality. Okay, you do 3D drawings of some mechanical parts. Okay, you're gonna put it in a 2D drawing. You're gonna have to specify what are the important dimensions, what is the tolerance, things like that, because you get to give some guidance on quality, and you need to give the inspectors a way to confirm that what you wanted is what was done. Okay, so it's really about the basics. Let's say it this way. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of companies not doing that. Okay, so it's the basics, but when you go to, let's say politely, emerging economies, and a lot of bottom of the barrel suppliers here around China, and also in Vietnam and in India and so on, some of them consistently fail to do that. So it is very much an issue in certain industries, especially, let's say, cheap consumer goods and so on, right? And some buyers also don't take the steps to provide clear guidance on what is acceptable or what is not acceptable, right? They say, oh, it's very important that this is whatever 20.5 cm from here to here. Okay, but what's the tolerance? And nobody wants to decide, and the designer has no clue because it's basic, but it's something that they are unable to put on the drawing. So it's basic, but in our world, it's still often lacking, right? And again, come back to ISO 9001. That's very much, all about conformance to specifications, and they enlarge it a little bit. It's making sure that the different stakeholders, the different interested parties, as they say, have expectations. These expectations are recognized, and that this, it's taken into account in the plan, basically, right? But then in the end, it's still about thinking of what is required and expected, and then taking steps to ensure that that these people would be happy, right? So it's all about the basics. What is promised, and how do we actually make sure they're happy? Now, there's quality with a big Q, and that's more about, it has a much wider scope. Okay, if you work on quality with a big Q, then you take 2-3 steps back, and you look at the process and the materials and everything, and you say, okay, what to do to make sure that all of this comes nicely together. And you don't just look at, the finished products, are they going to be within specifications, blah, blah, blah. You look at the ability of that whole process and that whole supply chain to deliver on time, on quality, on budget, consistently, without surprises. And that really takes you into completely another realm. Right? It's really about designing the process and picking the right people to work with, the right suppliers to work with, obviously, and having a plan to improve all these processes where it makes the most sense, prioritize and everything, obviously, to get to, closer and closer to, let's say, the perfect process. Okay. And that's where quality people are supposed to work hand in hand with maintenance people, with human resources people to make sure people are trained, et cetera, with all the other, with purchasing, with production, et cetera, with continuous improvement, lean, whatever they like to be called. All of these folks, they should all be working in the same direction, right? That was sort of the philosophy of Deming, a famous, originally a statistician with the U.S. Census, and he went to Japan a number of times and so on, and he influenced a bunch of companies, including Toyota. And Deming's, let's say, general philosophy turned into a bit of a fad in the 80s with what they call total quality management. But the idea was pretty good. Total means everybody in the company and everybody in the supply chain, including the suppliers and so on, got to work on this together, and they've got to think of the impact of what they're doing, and the design of the processes that they follow, et cetera, the impact of all that on the customers, including internal customers, external customers, et cetera, right? Again, in terms of product quality, but also, on-time delivery, cost control, et cetera. I say a little bit of a fad because just like Six Sigma and some other things, there might be some good stuff in there, and there is a lot of good stuff, but people just jumped on the bandwagon and gave it a try, like a program, and then after 2 or 3 years, they say, "Oh, okay, we're happy about this, and now our next priority is this other stuff," and then they completely drop the focus on it, and and they go into something else, right? So it's a little bit sad to see that. Very, very common in, especially around quality topics. It's very common. So that's quality with a little q, quality with a big Q. A very smart, I would say, definition. So there's a ton of definitions, right? It's conformance to specifications, fitness for purpose, which is a little bit wider, et cetera, et cetera. There's a ton of definitions of what is quality. But a guy called Juran, Joseph Juran, who also is considered pretty much what they call a guru in quality, sort of at the same level as Deming. And this guy also had a lot of influence over American and Japanese businesses. He's pretty famous because he published a handbook with a number of other authors. And then, I don't know, it's like the 6th edition or the 7th edition. I don't even know. I'm not really following up. I have an older one, maybe the 5th one. And his definition is that quality is the agreement of reality and expectancy, right? So the words are very important here. What is reality? Well, that you can look at any part of a manufacturing operation, for example. You say, what is reality here? Like, what is, of course, what is the finished product? How good is it? How, what's the proportion of good ones, etc. You can look at the the lifetime of expensive equipment. You can look at a number of things, the amount of material that is scrapped or that is reworked, the something that's becoming more and more important these days with all the focus on environmental conservation, the amount of energy consumed, right? The number of material that was that did not make it into the final product, etc., etc., etc. Right? So you can pick whatever indicator you want that makes sense, and then you say, does reality, the real situation, agree with expectancy? And expectancy has sort of a double meaning, which is quite interesting. One is what is expected, by customers, internal customers, whatever, right? Whoever it is. So if it's about having finished products that are pretty good consistently, then it's a customer, right? Or the next process or whatever. If it's the lifetime of the equipment, well, it might be finance, okay? Because it has a very strong impact on the amount of investment needed to keep maintaining that equipment and to renew it when needed. So what is expected, and then have we done a good enough job to keep up, with these expectations? And the other meaning is, mathematical expectancy. So the most advanced manufacturers, especially for complex processes that involved a lot of physical or chemical reactions, a bit, complex processes, especially when there's a lot of variables coming into play, tend to use statistical tools to understand what happens in their processes and how to make them stable, how to make them more capable, et cetera, over time. Okay, if you use all of that, you're gonna have an expectancy basically. Okay, if we do all this is what the model tells us that we should get, and are we getting there, right? So that's sort of the double meaning. So it's pretty wide. Anyway, the agreement of reality with expectancy, it's actually quite profound, because you can go to a manufacturing place and look at things and tell them in general, sorry, but here quality sucks, and then they will say, well, they will usually tend to understand it as your finished products are pretty bad. And maybe they will say, no, look, they're good and whatever. Yeah, but that's because you readjust every single one of them. So you keep doing rework, and then you have inspectors to sort out the bad ones, and then you reprocess them. And so it's extremely inefficient. And then what happens is you pass these costs on to your customer in the end, right? So is your customer still happy anyway? Of course not. And the products that have been reworked, they're not as good as the first time good products. I'm sorry, in terms of reliability and everything. And maybe they are okay right now, but maybe in 6 months they would naturally go back to maybe the wrong shape or something. So when a manager takes that kind of a view of their operations, and they try to think, okay, with that kind of definition of quality, are we doing a great job? Well, it's pretty obvious, what the issues are. And it's very important to get away from quality with a little q. Hey, what is the acceptance rate or the reject rate communicated by our customer? Oh, they say it's 1%. And we know from, we know who the competitors are, and we know that theirs is 1.5%. Okay, we're doing great, right? But no, 1% is 1% too many. What can be done to reduce that, right? And the customer might expect 0.5%. All right, so actually you're not delivering to the quality that they want, right there. You're not delivering to the expectancy of the customer, right there. Quality is not good. Okay. And so that's, little Q, big Q type of quality. Do you want to look into the, how to say, with a very narrow focus, or you want to step back and try to think more in terms of process excellence, right? How can we get closer to process excellence? Because that's really the way in the long run to keep improving and to keep surviving, really. Okay. So another interesting angle to the question, what is quality, is if we look at a product quality, okay? Product quality, what actually is expected by a customer, consumer, whatever, of a product. And it would tend to differ from product category to product category, right? So if it's a medical device, you really want to make sure, it's sterile and it's not going to bring you any extra infection or anything like that, right? If it's a class 2, class 3 device, you really want to make sure you're safe. Like, it's not going to bring more problems. If it's a medical device, like a heart rate monitor, you really want to make sure it works also. Like, you can depend on it. It's going to keep working. It's not going to stop after 2 weeks, right? So that it's a question of reliability, durability, right? If you drive a car and you buy a Toyota Prius, then you hope that your gas consumption will be very low. And maybe that's your number one, and that gas emissions would be very low too. Maybe that's your number one criteria for buying it. If you buy an expensive Tesla, Model S or something, then maybe it's all about the prestige of being associated with a forward-looking brand, and at the same time it's a pretty cool product, and it maybe you're getting a bit old, but it makes you look a bit or feel a little bit more like a young man, So it's all about self-esteem and the self-image, right? And if you buy if you buy a Patagonia shirt, then you want to be seen as one of those people in the group of people who are very actively engaged and who really don't want to have anything to do with products that can damage the environment. So it's sort of it's about having meaning, right, in your life, and sort of being accepted in a group and being seen in a certain way, right? Does that make sense? It's a lot of different things, different values of a product, right? And very often when people say, this is a great product, this is a good product, it's got to be unpacked a little bit. It's got to be unpacked. And there's an interesting book that was published a while ago by David Garvin. It was called Managing Quality, right? And it was published when American industry was really under siege. They were having a lot of issues with Japanese products. It was in the 80s. He tried to explain, don't just focus on one or two things that the Japanese are very good at, because you're gonna get toasted. You got to focus more on what customers really want, and you got to think of where you need to have a competitive edge. If you, for example, in the auto industry at that time, if you try to develop a new model faster than Japanese, if you want to have a model that's that offers more bang for the buck than the Japanese and consume less gas, and is more reliable, etc., etc. Well, good luck with that. It's going to take you a long time. Yeah, it took them, a good 20 years to realign. And right now there's not much of a competitive edge of the Japanese in that regard anymore. So, but focus on certain other things. And he said there's 5 factors, and that's pretty interesting. The first one is performance. Okay, so yeah, you make a motorbike, 250cc motorbike, and people want to know, how fast 0 to 60 miles an hour, what's the top speed, blah blah blah. What's the weight, what's the consumption, and all of that is performance. And for certain products, it is quite important, obviously. Okay, think of cameras. Expensive cameras for people who spend a lot of time taking photos and think of themselves as relatively advanced, photo geeks, let's say. They're going to compare them on certain criteria, and it's the same along a lot of categories. In electronics, right? What is the thinnest laptop? What is the fastest processor to do this or that, etc., etc. Right? So performance. But if people get focused on that, they might miss a lot of other things. Another one is reliability, and we've been talking a lot about reliability and durability here. But again, it's simply the ability of a product to take stresses from their environment, from the way they are used, and so on, and to resist them as long as they are, foreseeable, reasonable stresses, right? Not get broken very easily when the stress is a bit too large. So that's called durability. And also at the same time be reliable, meaning that if you get used in a certain way, certain predictable way, X number of times or cycles or whatever per day, per week, per month, you got to make it past the warranty period. You get to, maybe the expectation is maybe 3 years on average. On average, like 90% of the time, they will still be working after 3 years. That's a good kind of measure of reliability. And also serviceability, repairability, whatever you want to call it, maintainability. Certain products are easier to repair than others, or easier to upgrade, right? So if you have an iPhone, maybe you're not very happy because you can't just open it and change certain things by yourself. It's getting a little bit better because now they've been forced to give their repair kits and repair instructions to a number of independent service shops. So that's a plus. There's been a lot of push behind that, right? There were a few regulations that came up, I think last year, about the right to repair the products, and that is now really considered what a good quality product is supposed to offer, right? Also, Apple has redesigned the iPhone in the iPhone 14. So people who opened it, they say, "Oh, this one is, all the internal parts are arranged in quite a different way, and it makes it easier to repair." So they've been making some progress here. Okay. The next one is conformance. Does it conform to specs? Does it conform to regulations? And if you're going to have, I don't know, if IKEA is going to have a set of tableware, and the mugs and the plates and whatnot, and maybe they come from 3 different suppliers. Well, if one of the suppliers messes up and the shade of gray and the shade of blue is a little bit off, then it's going to look bad when all of these products are together in a set. Okay, so it's just got to be all the same. This is a dumb example, but really, there's a lot of I don't know. For example, you you make brake systems for cars. Okay, well, when the brake system is activated, it's got to do its job. It's got to work, right, in a certain way, and and there are specific criteria for that, and it's got to last at least that many cycles of braking at a certain force, etc., etc. You could say it's reliability. It's also conformance to specs, because there's very specific specifications and very specific regulations around it. Okay, yeah. You get, for example, one of our friends, Brad Pritz, in the US, is a very experienced consultant in the auto industry, and specifically about the manufacturing of brakes, actually. And he published something on our website. When was that? Maybe 6 months ago, about the ways he checks what his suppliers are doing in terms of really confirming quality, confirming that is the right grade of steel that he gets, etc., etc. Well, he has to translate, the brakes have to work. He's got to translate it into a number of very specific criteria, right? It's quite important, right? So also when you have components that have to work with other components, you got to make sure, for example, the dimensions are going to fit. Otherwise, you got a problem. If the USB-C port I'm going to plug my iPad in doesn't fit the opening of the iPad, well, I'm not going to be able to charge my iPad, right? So it goes back to little Q kind of quality, but it is the basics. If you don't have that, in most cases, you really don't have anything that you can work with. Another one, factor number 4, he bundled a number of things in customer perception. Okay. So he included the aesthetics of the product, he included product features, and he included perceived quality in that, right? So aesthetics, I think people understand, right? If it looks nicer, like the Tesla Model S, it's nice, it's sexy, it's attractive, it's a great looking car. Okay. It is going to be seen as a better product, right? I think this one is clear. Well, product features, yeah. If the Tesla lets you do a lot more things and program a lot more things into the computer, and is going to play certain funny noises when you do this or that, okay, that's fun, that's extra features, and okay, let's do it. People are going to be more likely to buy it, right? Or for example, a much larger area for storing things. You can open the trunk in the front and put pretty big bags there, right? So this really translates into a better product. Okay, then you have perceived quality. So getting back to the Toyota and Honda cars, well, they tend to be perceived as better products, more reliable. You don't have a problem with your Honda until 200,000 miles or something, right? That's the way. Or yeah, if you live in a mountainous area and it snows and everything, oh, you have a Subaru,
Yeah.
They're all 4-wheel drive, they're all kind of sturdy products, usually very well made. And yeah, that kind of brand really comes with a lot of perceived quality. So the perception of the customer is quite important. So when we look at cars, of course, there's a lot of that. When we look at, electronics, I was talking about Apple. I think that's pretty obvious. There's a lot of emotional stuff going on here. And then but it's really across a wide range of products and services too. People are more likely to buy at Amazon than somewhere else because they know they can return very easily, because they know there's a very large selection, etc., 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 and they know there's a big company behind, like their credit card information will not go everywhere, right? Yeah, and then the fifth factor is fundamentals advantage. I think that could be the topic for another podcast because it's a bit wide, but sometimes there can be more that actually lead people to think that a certain product is a great product or is the right product for them, or they think this product is really above the competition, right? But I don't want to go into that. If I summarize, really talking about quality, this is good quality, bad quality, can mean 20 different things in 20 different contexts, right? So you gotta adjust, and you gotta make it more specific. Okay, if you're talking to your supplier and you say, well, want to make sure you give me good quality, well, you're going to have to define the standard. You're going to have to make sure they understand what you expect, and you got to make sure they understand also the percentage of bad products that you think is not acceptable, right? Because maybe the expectations are quite different here. Okay. But also if you walk the shop floor in their factory and you say, well, you got a lot of things to work on, and they come back to you and they say, well, okay, but our quality is pretty good. You should just look at that. Maybe they should open their mind a little bit and, think, well, maybe we should reconsider certain things. Maybe we should work on our systems and processes. But if the discussion is always about, hey, you delivered 2% of bad products in the past batch, that's pretty bad, we cannot keep going with that, then people stay at the level of little Q quality. Oh, but your standard is not clear. Oh, but the way we tested it, it passes, blah, blah, blah. Now, these are the very, very basics. You need to get that in place first before you can get to the next level. But once you have assured that the standard is clear, they test the product exactly the way you test them, etc., then you can go into the next level and challenge them and push them to improve really their operations. And same thing, maybe if you're dealing with your salespeople and your designers and so on, and people say, well, our products are great quality, but they don't sell. Okay, well, maybe you don't really understand what your customers value, right? You got to be careful. It's not the quality of your product is not just how many are returned because they don't work. It's much, much wider than that, right? What is the value that they perceive? How reliable is it, etc., etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I like that you've given quite a bit of airtime to the customer, so that the people that are buying the product, right. Because oftentimes in all of the different sort of processes or tools that can be used, like if we talk about quality planning, for example, the very first step is think about your customers' expectations. What are these? And that's before you do anything else. So yeah, that's to me, that's a good point that you've mentioned.
Yeah, right. Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Well, lots to unpack there today. So everybody that's listening, if you want to rewind and make sure you've got everything, that's a very interesting and sort of more philosophical approach to talking about quality, which I liked. If you're thinking about, well, okay, we are manufacturing in Asia, we're not 100% clear on if we're giving our manufacturers the right guidance for quality, get in touch, sofeast.com, contact us, and we can certainly be of help with that kind of discussion and making sure that everybody understands where they need to be, right?
Yep. Most cases we can help. Yep.
Absolutely. With that being said, we'll finish for this week and we'll be back next week as ever.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.